Hey everyone! Tonight we're heading straight into the frozen maw of the North Atlantic. Forget those tropical waters. There's no sandy beach here, no fancy drinks with little umbrellas. Just endless gray horizons, howling winds, and steel vessels barely held together by rust and sheer determination. Picture yourself as part of a U.S. Navy convoy escort in 1943, and let me spoil the ending. Chances are you won't make it through the day. Before you get too comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy my content. Drop a comment about where you're watching from and the local time. I'm always amazed how far these history stories reach. Now, dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for some background noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You wake to absolute darkness. Not just the absence of light, but a thick, almost wet blackness that feels like the cold itself has become tangible. Your hammock sways overhead, creaking in rhythm with the Atlantic's endless motion. Nearby, someone's boots hit the deck with a thud, followed by muffled cursing as they stub a toe on a locker. Welcome to the midnight watch. It's your first real day at sea. Or night. Hard to tell time in this steel maze of rattling pipes, low ceilings, and constant noise that vibrates in your teeth. You climb down clumsily, boots slipping on the grated floor as you fumble into your wool peacoat. It smells of salt and stale sweat despite being supposedly clean. You're already wearing 2 layers underneath, but it hardly matters. The cold wraps around you like an icy, wet towel. Nobody speaks as you make your way topside. There's no point. Everyone knows what's waiting out there. The North Atlantic in winter. A vast, unforgiving expanse that's colder than outer space and far more personal. When you step outside, the cold punches you in the face. It's the kind of cold that makes your eyes water instantly, then freezes those tears to your cheeks. Your breath comes out in thick clouds that look like smoke, and for one terrifying moment, you think maybe it is smoke. Maybe the engine's on fire or a nearby ship's been hit. But no, just your imagination playing tricks again. The sky's mostly clouded, but you catch glimpses of stars through the gaps. No moon tonight, just wind, salt spray, and a heavy, watchful silence that makes you feel like the ocean itself is listening. You trudge across the steel deck, each step ringing out like a dinner bell for U-boats. The surface is slick with half-frozen sea mist. The ship lurches slightly to port, and your stomach lurches with it. Gripping the railing, you squint across the black water. Somewhere out there, maybe just a few hundred yards away, another convoy ship churns through the darkness, visible only by the faintest glint of running lights. Technically, you're not supposed to show any lights at all, but sailors are human, and that tiny bulb glowing in an engine room porthole can feel like salvation. Or it could give away your position. Depends who's watching. The officer of the deck nods as you approach, already bundled in 3 layers and a scarf that smells like old bacon. He doesn't speak either, just jerks his thumb toward the lookout station. Up you go. Climbing the ladder feels like scaling an icicle. Your gloves stick to the frozen metal rungs. Your fingers go numb almost instantly. By the time you wedge yourself into position, the wind is screaming through your ears. You blink into the void. All you see is more blackness, and your breath curling in front of you like smoke signals to Neptune. You settle in. That's the job. Just watching, listening, trying not to freeze solid while scanning for the glint of a periscope or the trail of an incoming torpedo. Because when an attack comes, it comes fast. Historians still argue whether these night watches were anything more than ceremony. After all, sonar and radar were far more effective. But for morale, for superstition, for the illusion of control, you man your post. Somewhere below, the engine throbs like a distant heartbeat. It's oddly comforting, until you realize how loud it must sound underwater. Every propeller turn, every hull creak is an invitation to the wolves of the sea. Time doesn't pass up here. It freezes. You start seeing things, shapes in the water, ghost ships in the mist. Was that a fin? A snorkel? Or just a rogue wave? You rub your eyes and fight to stay awake. Falling asleep on watch isn't just a reprimand. You could doom the entire convoy. So you lean harder into the cold rail and hope the pain keeps you alert. Eventually, Footsteps sound below as the next watch arrives, fresh from below decks. They climb up shivering and nod. You don't say goodbye, just slide down the ladder, bones aching, trying not to think about how much of your life will be spent in this kind of cold. Below deck isn't warm, just less awful. You stomp your boots and head for the mess. Maybe there's coffee, maybe powdered eggs, or maybe just some guy from Ohio crying softly into his mittens. No judgment here. Before you can eat, the call comes. All hands. Muster on deck. It's the kind of order that makes your stomach do something awkward, like a somersault in cement. Muster means something's coming, or already here. You haul yourself back topside, and the sky is finally lightening. Not sunrise exactly, just a paler gray that makes everything look drained of color. You glance at the convoy, dozens of ships stretching into the mist. Merchant vessels, oil tankers, freighters. Some new, some rusted bathtubs barely staying afloat. All depending on you. You, a rookie with frozen fingers and a vague idea of where Iceland even is. And somewhere in that endless water, a periscope watches. You finally reach the mess hall after muster. And let's just say, gourmet dining this is not. There's something yellow and rubbery slapped on your tray. Maybe powdered eggs, maybe industrial adhesive someone forgot to label. Next to it, a strip of bacon so thin and stiff you could use it as a bookmark. But you eat it anyway. Not because you're hungry. Your stomach hasn't forgiven you for the rolling watch shift, but because that's what everyone else is doing. First lesson of convoy life. You do what the others do, or you stand out. And standing out gets you noticed. And getting noticed? Bad news. The guy next to you is called Red, maybe for his hair, maybe because nicknames stick fast out here. He nods toward a grizzled petty officer muttering into his coffee. XO says we had sonar contact last night. Red whispers like he's telling a ghost story. Something big. Might have been one of theirs. One of theirs means a U-boat. A German submarine. A steel predator designed to be silent, fast, and invisible until it decides to strike. You look up sharply, scanning faces around you. Most don't even blink. Not that they're not scared. They've just been scared so long, they've worn grooves in it. Like the ship's hull, weather-beaten but still floating. You try swallowing your eggs and end up chewing salt. Or is it fear? Hard to tell, but the taste lingers. Someone jokes about sharks. Someone else mentions how some U-boat crews would surface after a kill just to watch the wreckage drift. Probably a myth, but nobody argues it aloud. The Atlantic isn't where you take chances, even with stories. Then the quiet boiler room guy mentions a shadow on sonar late last night. Just one blip near the convoy's rear. Could have been anything. Whale, current trick, false echo. But nobody says that. Because when you're running the gauntlet between America and Europe with dozens of merchant ships depending on you, even a whisper of danger sours the whole day. You scrape your tray clean. Conversation dies after that. On deck, officers bark orders. The convoy's tightening formation today, pulling outer ships closer to create a protective shell around oil tankers and ammunition freighters. Nobody explains why. They never do unless necessary. But the tone says enough. Something spooked command. You return to your post and help handle ropes as the ship adjusts position. It's like trying to choreograph an elephant ballet. If the elephants were blindfolded and walking on wet marbles. Ships sway and slide in the swells, trying not to collide while keeping just enough distance to maneuver. It looks calm from a map. The ocean transforms into a different beast today. Yesterday it merely growled, today it hisses. The wind tears across the deck with icy spite that feels personal. Waves slap at the hull with rhythmic persistence, as if the sea is politely knocking, asking to come inside, for now at least. You're handed binoculars and ordered to scan the waterline. You obey because orders are orders, but everything looks identical. Endless gray. The sky's gray. The water's gray. Your mood? You guessed it, also gray. Still, you pretend to look busy. Nobody wants to be caught slacking when a U-boat attacks. That guy tends to be the last name called at roll call. Historians still debate whether those sonar blips represented real threats or were psychological warfare. False positives keeping nerves frayed and fingers on triggers. But aboard this ship, it doesn't matter. Every hint of danger gets treated as real. Because out here, there are no second chances. The first strike is usually the last. Just before lunch, an alarm shrieks. Or is it real? The klaxon's sharp wail cuts through wind like a blade. For half a second, your heart leaps into your throat. You sprint to your station, boots pounding slick metal, ears ringing from the siren scream. Someone yells, "Contact!" but nobody knows what or where. Or if it's real. You fall into line beside Red, who's attempting to pull a life vest over his head while chewing what appears to be beef jerky and an unlit cigarette simultaneously. But it's just another wave, he mutters. Or a whale. Or Neptune screwing with us again. Then the ship shudders slightly. Just a tremor. Like someone slammed a heavy door below decks. But you flinch anyway. You're told to stand down. It was nothing. Again. Still, your heart takes another 10 minutes to unclench. You head below just in time for lunch. More mystery powder, but this time there's soup. Sort of. It's thin, brown, and tastes like hot dishwater flavored with a memory of beef. You eat it gratefully. Afterward, you're given an hour below deck. A break, supposedly. You stretch out in your bunk and stare at the ceiling pipes that tick and hiss like they're about to burst. You close your eyes and try to rest. You dream of waves, of course. And silence. Too much silence. You jolt awake. Something's off. Then you hear it. Faint but real. A long, low tone echoing through the hall. A sonar ping. 1. Pause. 2. Longer pause. 3. Then nothing. You lie perfectly still. So does everyone else. Nobody speaks. Because if you name it, you give it power. Eventually, someone says false alarm, too loudly, too quickly. You nod. Pretend to believe it. Pretend you weren't just bargaining with the ceiling a minute ago. If this ship goes down, you won't last 5 minutes in that water. Less, probably. Cold like this doesn't give warnings. It just takes. And all that. That was still before noon. Afternoon arrives without ceremony. No bells. No trumpets. Just a slightly lighter gray bleeding through clouds, and the nagging realization your boots are still wet from morning. You pull them on anyway. The cold inside feels like a dare. The convoy moves like a slow, churning beast of steel and strategy. Dozens of ships the horizon, mostly merchant vessels with chipped paint and crews just trying to survive. You're part of the skeleton force, keeping them safe. In theory, convoy formations aren't as organized as you'd imagine. You'd picture neat rows cutting through waves like a military parade, but reality resembles a sluggish game of bumper cars played atop a washing machine. Every vessel jostles for position. Wind, waves, and engine hiccups constantly push and pull them like stubborn cattle refusing to stay in line. You're positioned mid-flank, close enough to the rear to see stragglers wobbling out of formation, close enough to the center to know you'd better not screw up. Orders come in bursts. Adjust heading 5 degrees starboard. Drop speed 2 knots. Tighten formation. You're constantly reacting to neighboring ships, who are reacting to their neighbors, who are reacting to weather that answers to no one. Officers call it tactical fluidity. The crew calls it organized chaos. And just when things might settle, a shout from the crow's nest sends ripples across the deck. Ship out of line. You squint toward the convoy's rear. One freighter's veering off, slightly at first, then sharply. You can't hear its engines, but something's clearly wrong. It's falling behind, nose yawing like a drunk in a snowstorm. Orders crackle through the intercom. Your destroyer's told to slow and investigate. Within minutes, your convoy is short one Guardian. The struggling freighter looks like it barely survived World War I, let alone this one. You pull alongside carefully. Nobody wants a mid-ocean fender bender. The freighter's crew waves frantically, pointing aft. Finally, a message gets through. Rudder jammed, they say. Trying to fix it. They insist they're fine. Nobody believes them. One officer mutters about sitting ducks and periscope bait. Still, the captain radios command. The decision comes back. Freighter continues at reduced speed, rejoins when able. You'll escort it for an hour, maybe 2. That's how convoys work. Nobody gets left behind. Until someone does. This is the danger zone. On the convoy's fringe, you're exposed. The center's protected like a turtle in its shell. The edges? That's where sharks feed. You take position and try looking casual while manning the deck gun. Not that you'd hit anything if a U-boat surfaced now. Most don't. They strike from below, launch torpedoes, and vanish before anyone notices. The deck gun's more psychological than practical, a metal scarecrow waving at ghosts. The swells grow taller, rising and falling in lazy arcs that tilt the ship side to side. Your legs learn to move with it, bending, adjusting with each dip. Still, you bang a knee on a pipe and curse softly. The ocean doesn't care. A petty officer hands you binoculars. "Watch the freighter," he says, already walking off. So you watch, and what you see unsettles you. A crewman's throwing something overboard. Something big. You squint. Cargo? Trash? Broken crate? You try not to imagine worse, but your brain goes there anyway. You lower the binoculars. Seen enough. Back aboard, the radio crackles. All clear for now. Resume formation. You glance back at the freighter as it slowly turns toward the convoy. It looks small out here, smaller than you realized. Just a rusted tin can floating in a killing field. Back in position, you resume pretending you know what you're doing while trying not to freeze. A supply officer passes out scarves, knitted by someone's Iowa aunt. You wrap it around your neck, ignoring how it smells faintly of cinnamon and lavender. It feels too human for this place. Historians still debate whether these massive convoys actually worked. Sure, they reduced individual losses, but critics say they also created juicy clustered targets. From above, it must have looked like a buffet line for submarines. You try not to think about that. Instead, you notice each sailor's little rhythm, cleaning rifles, adjusting ropes, fiddling with gear. Nobody talks much. Speaking too loud might summon what none of you want to name. You catch Red lighting a cigarette behind a bulkhead. He offers you one. You take it, not because you smoke, but because it feels like a ritual. You both lean on the railing, watching the distant gray silhouette of the freighter still limping along. "I heard this stretch is called Torpedo Alley," Red says, exhaling slowly. "Nice name, huh?" You nod. You've heard it too. The path between Greenland and Britain where U-boats made entire convoys disappear. Dozens of ships. Thousands of sailors. Some survived. Most didn't. The sun dips lower. Not that it was ever really up. Just a brighter patch of sky now fading into dusk. The temperature drops sharply. Your scarf's already damp. Your fingers ache inside gloves. And your boots? Still wet. You glance at the freighter one last time. Then it vanishes behind a swell. Not sunk. Not exploded. Just gone from view. And for a moment, your brain plays tricks, pretending the freighter never existed. Like it slid sideways out of reality, swallowed by the sea. You shake it off. Too much ocean. Not enough coffee. Just keep moving. Back on regular duty, you're assigned to minor deck work, scraping rust, checking lines, tightening bolts that somehow always come loose even though you swear they were fine yesterday. The wind slices through your coat like a frozen razor. Every tool feels dipped in ice. Even your breath betrays you, condensing inside your collar before freezing into tiny flakes on your scarf. The sea heaves underfoot in a tired, endless rhythm. You think you're getting used to it until the swell shifts direction without warning. Suddenly you're not just swaying. You're stumbling, gripping the rail, fighting nausea. Deep breaths. Hard blinks. An older sailor hands you a coat button. "Chew this," he says. Sounds stupid. Gives you something to focus on. You chew it. Surprisingly, it helps. Sort of. The rest of the crew isn't faring much better. Everyone's pale, damp, irritable. Tempers flare over nothing. Stepped on toes, dropped wrenches, using too much sugar in the coffee ration. Nobody wants to fight. Nobody has energy not to. While coiling rope with Murph, a wiry Floridian who used to give Everglades boat tours, he mentions getting bitten by an alligator once. "Tore my whole pant leg off," he says deadpan. "Didn't even notice till I got home." You're unsure if he's joking when he suddenly squints toward the bow. You hear that. You pause. Beyond the usual noise, wind, engine, water slapping steel, there's something else. A creak? A groan? Or just your nerves grinding like old gears? Murph shakes his head. Never mind. Ship always makes noise. Just messing with you. But you don't relax. Because he's right. The ship constantly groans. Metal on metal, hull against sea. pipes shifting with pressure changes. Sometimes it sounds alive, breathing, thinking. That's why some swear it's haunted. Rumor says one merchant vessel in your convoy was previously torpedoed and salvaged. Now it sails again, patched, painted, renamed, but supposedly ghosts remain. Paint peels no matter how many coats they apply. Metal groans in dry dock. Radios pick up voices and static during rough weather. Probably nonsense. Maybe not. Everyone here believes at least one superstition. Some refuse to eat before sunrise. Others won't shave during patrols. One sailor carries a doll his sister made, swearing it once stopped a torpedo from detonating. You don't laugh. Out here, you cling to whatever brings comfort. Historians still argue whether morale or superstition played a bigger role in maintaining discipline during these long hauls. The Navy issued regulations, sure, but sailors relied more on habit, tradition, and stubbornness to keep going. You're starting to understand why. Even basic needs like sleep become challenges. There's no rhythm to days. You rest in short, unsatisfying chunks. Lights flicker on without warning. Alarms sound at odd hours. Your body never fully relaxes because somewhere in your mind ticks that reminder. You're floating over 1,000 feet of freezing water with torpedoes somewhere beneath. Late afternoon, you're sent to inspect a dragging cable connected to a towed sonar device. Basically a giant underwater ear trailing behind the ship. Something's wrong. The tension's off. Could be seaweed. Could be worse. You volunteer. Anything to distract from cold and waiting. The equipment fights you. Pulling, tugging, cursing under breath. Finally, it comes free, coated in thick, dark slime. Seaweed. Something worse? It smells like a swamp fought a fish market and lost. You gag, pulling your scarf higher. Red appears, laughing. Welcome to glamorous sonar ops, he says, teeth chattering. You should see jellyfish season. You chuckle, not because it's funny, because the alternative is screaming into wind. With the line secure, you climb back up and scan the horizon. The convoy's barely visible, faint shadows shifting through fog. Ships disappear easily out here. Physically, mentally, you blink and a freighter you were watching vanishes. Behind a wave? Or just gone? Keep your eyes moving, someone says behind you. Ocean plays tricks. You nod. You already know. Even seagulls seem complicit today. They circle overhead, slow and heavy, riding thermals. Silent. Watching. One crewman swears gulls only follow when expecting a meal. The unspoken implication hangs. Meals usually float. You look away. Back inside, you grab coffee from the mess. Lukewarm, faintly metallic, but hot enough. You sit near the galley listening to quiet talk. One sailor describing home, another sketching what might be a wife or just a memory in a tiny notebook. You feel like an intruder just sitting there. Then, a loud bang overhead. Everyone freezes. A second bang. Footsteps. Shouting voices. You're on your feet, coffee splashing across the table. All hands to stations. The call comes sharper this time. You sprint for gear, slipping once, barely avoiding cracking your head on a valve. Your helmet's unbuckled as you burst topside. The wind's howling stronger now. Whitecaps crash over the bow. You don't bother dodging. Already soaked. You scan the horizon. Nothing. But officers shout coordinates. Something was spotted. Convoy's rear. Could have been a U-boat surfacing. A whale. A guilty-looking log. Doesn't matter. Everyone's on edge now. Fingers hover near triggers. Depth charges get double-checked. The ship vibrates with tension. Then, nothing. No explosion. No confirmation. No wreckage. Radar clears. Another false alarm. Maybe. Nobody says it aloud, but you all think it. The U-boats are watching, waiting for the right moment. The quiet is worse than the bang. The bang means it's happening. The silence? That means it might be. You head below again, but not for rest. You need dry socks. And maybe new nerves. Peeling off your boots, you dump about half a cup of seawater from each. It splashes onto the metal floor pathetically. Your socks, if they still qualify, are stiff with salt, like someone tried making rationed beef jerky from them. Peeling them off carefully, your feet sting in warmer air. The space below deck smells of damp wool, stale tobacco, mechanical grease. The kind of odor that seeps into clothes and skin until you become part of the ship. Everything sweats condensation here. Pipes, walls, even bunks. You hang your socks on twine above your hammock beside laundry that hasn't dried in 3 days. Wriggling into spare socks, still damp, but less offensive. You sit on your bunk's edge, staring at nothing. The ship's rocking feels more violent than earlier. Your stomach churns with each movement. A petty officer once said, "If you fight the sea, she wins." He didn't say what happens if you don't fight. Probably still loses. Up top, another whistle blows. Rest time's over. Climbing back up, you immediately feel the shift. Stronger wind, taller waves. The bow rises, then slams down with a splash, spraying over the railing. You brace against a vent, scanning water. The convoy's harder to see. Mist, wind, and distance blur everything into shapes that might be ships or imagination. The sea doesn't roar. That's a myth. It groans, low, endless, mean. The kind of sound that makes molars ache and thoughts drift to places you'd rather not picture. A sign to secure a starboard cable threatening to whip across deck like a snake if tension fails. You grab hold with stiff, gloved hands. Every wave makes it harder. First lifting your weight to keep it from yanking free, then leaning your whole body to avoid being dragged across slick steel like a fish on a line. Finally secured, someone claps your shoulder. You don't see who, just a nod before they're gone. Everyone moves faster now. Nobody lingers. The sky darkens, though it's not even late. Out here, day and night are less about light than what kind of cold you're enduring. Stealing a seaward glance, you swear you see it, a line. A faint, unnatural ripple cutting against wave patterns. Not splash, not foam, just movement. You blink. Gone. Did anyone else see? Red's nearby, adjusting his collar, staring straight ahead. You consider speaking up. Then don't. Either he didn't see it, or he did and won't talk. Both options equally bad. Below decks, the galley serves dinner. Corned beef hash tasting like it was cooked in 1917 and thawed yesterday. Still, you eat slowly. The warmth is reward enough. Someone tries starting a song, an old naval tune, but it fizzles after 2 lines. Nobody's in the mood. A sailor plays solitaire with damp, creased cards beside a photo of a woman in a bathing suit tucked near the aces. Maybe a wife, maybe a dance partner turned memory. You try not to stare. Everyone has lifelines. That's his. Back in your berth, you jot nonsense in your notebook. Words, sketches, something proving you were here. Not much survives out here. Paper, memory, or people. Historians still debate how many sailors unraveled mentally on long convoy missions. Official numbers are low, but unofficially, isolation eats people differently. Slowly, quietly. One day you're fine. The next you're whispering to boots or crying over a spoon. You're not there yet, but you feel the edge. Back on deck, the ship jolts violently, too violently. You slam against the railing, barking your shin while cursing through clenched teeth. The wind whips past your ears with mocking intensity. Another wave breaks over the bow. You've stopped dodging the spray, already soaked through. Then you spot it off the port side. First nothing, then something. Debris? A barrel? Too low, too fast. You squint. There it is again, just for a second. The dark hump of something slipping beneath the surface before vanishing. This time, Red sees it too. He doesn't speak, just stiffens. His eyes dart toward the officers. But no orders come. No alarm. No confirmation. Maybe they didn't see it. Or maybe they're ignoring it, hoping denial might make it stop being real. It doesn't. Another jolt. Not the ship this time. Your gut. That primal feeling of being watched. Like something ancient and patient waits just below the surface. You want to run, but there's nowhere to go. Just water and steel and your own pulse hammering behind your eyes. Then, the sonar pings again. Once. Twice. 3 slow beats. Then silence. Callahan's voice crackles through the comms. Sonar contact. Possible sub. Range unknown. Orders fly from the bridge. No course change yet. No depth charges. Just alert status. Everyone tenses. The sea looks empty. But you know better. You're told to hold position. Eyes forward. Be ready. You wait. And wait. And wait. Nothing comes. No torpedoes roar. No engines growl. Just the ship's creaks and your own pulse in your ears. You want something to happen, or to be wrong. But this limbo, it's worse. After 20 minutes, you're stood down. No attack. No confirmation. The contact disappears from sonar. Historians still debate whether U-boats intentionally shadowed convoys for days before striking, gathering intel, identifying weak spots. Some sailors reported feeling hunted even without attacks. Navy records often dismissed it as nerves. You don't think it was nerves. You think something blinked at you, then slipped back under. Below deck, you peel off your gloves and study your fingers. Red, cracked, numb in spots. The fingertips feel foreign. You flex them slowly, confirming they're still yours. Near the stairwell, you rest against the cold wall while someone hums a lullaby. No words, just melody. Maybe from a childhood radio. You don't see who's humming. Don't look. Just listen. For a moment, the ship feels human again. Then, another ping. Louder. 3 quick pulses. Then the order. Ready depth charges. You don't wait to be told twice. You're back on deck before the humming stops. Ready depth charges. Echoes through the ship. You feel it more than hear it. Through boot soles, in air pressure, in how every man suddenly moves sharper. The tension knob's been cranked. You race to position. The sea lies eerily calm, making everything worse. Moonlight spotlights your ship, the waves, other convoy vessels, like you're a shooting gallery target. At the depth charge rack, you help prep the canisters, bulky steel drums of silence about to become underwater hammers. Fuses secured, you nod to the officer. Wait for it, he says. The bridge calculates. Another ping, this time with direction. Confirmed contact. Starboard quarter. Approximate depth, 75 meters. Too close. Then the command. Release pattern alpha, 5 charges. You brace. One after another, the depth charges roll off the stern, disappearing into blackness with heavy splashes. Each trails an invisible countdown. You count with your breath. 3, 4. Boom. A muffled explosion thunders through the hull. Boom. Then 3 more, spaced like footsteps in a hallway. The deck shakes. Plates rattle below. You feel it in your bones. Deep, low, like underwater thunder. Rushing to the rail, you peer down. Just froth. Bubbling water. Faint flashes beneath the surface. No wreckage. No oil slick. No black mass surfacing in defeat. Just sea. And silence. Anything on sonar, someone calls. Pause. Then, no contact. Signal lost. Same story again. You might have hit something. Scared it off. Or wasted 5 good charges on a curious whale. Returning to post, your heart still races. Unsure whether to feel relieved or more anxious. Out here, no confirmation is the scariest outcome. Callahan joins you near the rear rail, wiping grease from his hands. Like swatting mosquitoes in a blackout, he says lowly. You swing. Feel something. Never know if it was the right thing. You nod. How many charges left? Plenty, he replies. But not forever. You both fall quiet. Nearby, Red scribbles in his notebook. New name? You ask? He shakes his head. Just practicing how to write the ones we already lost. Getting the letters right. You don't ask what he means. Instead, you watch the water, calmer now, but your mind won't release that contact. That something was right there beneath you, watching, choosing not to strike, or waiting. Night wears on. Eventually, the captain appears on deck, a quiet man with silvering hair and an old burn mark curling along his left jaw. He walks the perimeter like he's feeling the ship's pulse through his soles. He nods as he passes you. You nod back. He stops near the rail, lighting a cigarette while shielding the flame. Against regulations, but nobody comments. Staring into darkness, he says softly, "They're not gone. They're just patient." You think he's talking to himself. Below decks, you take a short break near the engine room stairwell, head pressed against bulkhead. Callahan finds you. You good? You nod without opening your eyes. We lost 3 today, he says after a pause. 2 confirmed. 1 just gone. You already knew. But now it's official. Still moving, though, he adds, forcing a smile. You sit together in silence. Later, you return topside. The storm finally weakens. Rain lightens. The sea settles, not calm, but less furious. You look up. The moon's back, pale, thin, watching. The gulls are gone. Not one in the sky. And that's the scariest part. The gulls are gone. It takes a minute to notice. After the chaos, fire, rain, after the bodies, you expect your mind to invent more noise, more motion. But glancing up, it's just sky. No circling. No white specks coasting thermals. No pecking at life rings. Just empty air. You say nothing, but feel it. So does Red. He keeps glancing up like he's lost something. Murph mutters maybe they found what they wanted. Nobody laughs. The sea's quieter now, but nothing's gentle. Waves still rise and fall with intent, heaving ships like toys in a tub. Wind moans low across decks, curling around ankles and whispering into collars. The cold returns, not the lashing rain kind, but the dry, bone-deep kind settling behind your eyes. The convoy's tighter than ever, yet feels smaller. You've lost count of ships remaining. Try recalling who should be where. The tanker ahead. The freighter 2 columns over with painted stack numbers. But too many have vanished, shifted, fallen out of order. The group feels patchy, uneven, like a chorus missing voices. You walk the deck again. Same path, heavier legs. Below, someone sings softly off-key. Swing low, sweet chariot. It echoes through bulkheads like something leaking from the ship's bones. Red joins you at the rail, jacket zipped to his chin. Not chewing gum, not speaking, just watching water. I had a dream last night, he finally mutters. Yeah, we were all home. Whole crew at a baseball game. Picnic with families. Kids running around. You were there too. You wait. He shifts weight. The weird part. Every time I looked away from someone, they disappeared. Poof. One by one. You don't answer. Don't need to. Instead, you give him the emergency chocolate bar you've saved since week 1. He takes it wordlessly. The sun rises slowly behind haze, barely piercing clouds. It stains water orange and pink momentarily before gray swallows it again. You blink in the light. It almost hurts. Then the klaxon shrieks. This one's different, short, repeated, urgent. You move faster than tired muscles should allow. Grab helmet, gloves, jacket, sprint topside. Visual on submarine, someone shouts. You reach the forward deck just as it surfaces, a gray hump breaking water less than 1,000 meters off the starboard bow. Sleek, low, cutting surface like a blade through silk. The conning tower rises momentarily, hatch slit, maybe periscope mount, then submerges again. But it doesn't matter. The pattern's locked. Depth charge spread. Full arc fire now. The ship shakes as charges roll off. You grip a rope tightly. One after another, 6 total. 3 per side. Boom, boom, boom. You brace, squinting into sea for any sign of a hit. Oil slick, bubble trail, hissing air. Anything. But the water stays quiet. The ship rocks in aftermath. Sailor skin surfaces. One swears he saw something float up. Another says it was just his reflection. Historians still argue whether these aggressive depth charge patterns actually worked or just made convoys feel proactive. Most U-boat kills were claimed this way. Fast, furious, no confirmed target. After-action reports sometimes listed successful strikes, only to learn days later the sub escaped or wasn't there. The sun climbs higher, pretending nothing happened. The ocean flattens, glassy and quiet. Breeze dries your collar, but fingers stay numb. You're dismissed to the mess, finding Red and Murph staring at stew tins, gazes not quite meeting. You join them. Nobody speaks. Halfway through the meal, the loudspeaker crackles. All hands. Expected arrival to friendly port within 24 hours. Maintain formation. Remain vigilant. You blink. Port. The word takes a second to land. Land means docks. Warm showers. Coffee not from rusted drums. Paper letters. Names. Laughter. Survival's promise. But it's not joy flooding the room. Not even relief. Something stranger. Heavier. 24 hours is a long time. Much can happen in 24 hours. You all know it. The rest of the day drags endlessly. You scrub at rust spots that don't need scrubbing. You repack gear that was perfectly fine as is. You check and recheck ropes. You coil cables only to uncoil them again. Not because they require attention, but because your body doesn't know how to exist without constant motion. And then night falls. The final night. You climb to the watch station one last time, sitting beside Callahan as he fine-tunes the sonar dials with grease-stained fingers. "Want to know what I think?" he says, voice barely above a whisper. "Go on. I believe they let us spot that sub on purpose this morning." You turn toward him. "Why would they do that?" He shrugs. "So we'd waste our depth charges. So we'd spend our last night staring forward instead of watching our backs." You don't respond. Because it could be true. Everything could be. The final watch rotation is assigned. You take position at the mid-deck rail, your breath fogging in the cold air as you grip the freezing steel. And you wait for the last stretch, the final push through the wolf's jaws. Sleep doesn't come on this last night in the North Atlantic. Not from duty, not from orders, but because something primal inside you, some ancient, lizard brain instinct, refuses to shut down. It's the kind of alertness that doesn't need coffee. Your body simply knows this is it. The final stretch, where everything either ends quietly or doesn't end at all. You're stationed mid-deck again, not your usual post, but formal assignments have blurred. Everyone just goes where they're most useful now, where they can keep their hands busy. You're securing a flapping canvas cover that seems determined to tear free and escape. Across from you, Red adjusts the rigging around a lifeboat. He hasn't spoken in hours. The ocean lies strangely flat tonight. Dangerously so. That's what unsettles you most. Not the waves, not the wind, the stillness. The ship glides forward as if sliding through a painting. Smooth, no rocking. The moon hangs weak overhead, just a thin smear of light behind gauzy clouds. No stars tonight, just haze, just motion, just the sound of your own breathing. Then comes the whisper, a creak in the hull, a sonar ping, a flicker of movement in the water. They're then gone. You freeze, fingers tightening on the rope. Red looks up. He saw it too. No alarms yet. No shouts. Then another flash off the bow. Then two more. A streak of silver beneath the surface. Then time slows. Torpedoes. You don't hear anyone shout the word this time. It's like the ship itself knows. The klaxon finally catches up, wailing across the deck like a wounded animal. Torpedo. Port side. Brace for impact. You drop. Red drops. Someone yells for a medic. Too early, too automatic by now. You grip the rail as the ship lurches hard. A second later, impact. Boom. But not your ship. One of the freighters, not far off. You turn and see the fire. No warning this time. Just light. A vertical column of flame erupting from the dark. See, like someone struck a match against the ocean and let it burn upward. Your ears ring despite the distance. The explosion's shockwave traveled through water into your bones. Then secondary detonations. Chain reactions. The freighter's cargo, ammunition, maybe fuel, tears through the night. The second blast rocks your ship, sending a wall of spray high enough to blot out the moon. For a heartbeat, everything is white noise and black smoke. Then silence. Again, you scramble upright. Red's beside you, bleeding from a shallow cut above his eyebrow. He wipes it without comment and returns to the rail. Another contact appears on sonar, then vanishes. Then another. Every subsequent ping could be real or phantom. Nobody can tell anymore. Your captain makes the call. No pursuit. Get the convoy home. Those words travel down the deck like a whispered prayer passed from man to man. Get the convoy home. You pull your gloves tighter. You watch the horizon. You clench your jaw and force your breathing to slow. You haven't been hit. Not yet. Somehow, you make it through the night. And then, sometime after dawn, the sea begins to change. The swells soften. The wind warms slightly. And there, barely visible through the lingering haze, land. Not much at first. Not even clearly defined. Just a dark rise against the horizon. Trees perhaps. Smoke from a chimney. The faint outline of a lighthouse. But it's there. You see it. And the call goes out. Land in sight. A quiet cheer ripples across the deck. Subdued. Hesitant. Like men remembering how to make noise after too long in silence. You don't cheer. You just stare. Red slumps against the bulkhead and exhales deeply. Didn't think we'd see it, he admits. You nod. Neither did you. Below deck, someone digs out a harmonica. The notes waver, off-key, but they're music. Real music. Not engine hum. Not sonar pings. Not the shriek of alarms. It feels wrong. It feels right. You look around. Some men smile. Some weep openly. Some are simply too exhausted for either. Your boots squelch with seawater. Your fingers are cracked and raw. Your ribs ache from too many impacts and too little rest. But you made it. And now, the sea fades behind you. The ship slows, gliding toward harbor like a sleepwalker returning to bed. The air changes. Less salt, more earth. You smell soil. Coal. The faint aroma of cooked food drifting from shore. The dock comes into view, lined with cranes and ropes and men in clean uniforms waving you in. The contrast is jarring. They look untouched. You feel ancient by comparison. The gangplank drops. Boots strike solid wood. Voices rise, some too loud after weeks of enforced quiet, some still instinctively whispering. But you? You linger at the rail a moment longer. Because part of you remains out there. Somewhere in the dark. Somewhere beneath the waves. Still listening for sonar pings. Still gripping the railing. Still waiting for the next attack. You're the last to disembark. Your foot touches solid ground. And the ship exhales behind you. Her job is done. And so is yours. For now. So close your eyes. Let the engine noise fade. Let the water still. Let the memory of metal and mist dissolve into silence. You made it. You're safe. And for the first time in weeks. You don't have to stay awake anymore. The docks swarm with activity as you step onto solid ground. Real ground that doesn't pitch or roll beneath your feet. Shore personnel in crisp uniforms bustle about, their boots clicking sharply against the wooden planks. The contrast with your own stumbling gait makes you feel like some sea creature dragged onto land, blinking against unfamiliar sunlight. Welcome to Scotland, a dock worker calls out, eyeing your salt-stained uniform. His voice sounds unnaturally loud after weeks of whispered conversations and engine noise. You nod, unsure if your own voice still works properly. Red staggers beside you, squinting like a mole emerging from its tunnel. Thought I'd forgotten what trees looked like, he mutters, staring at a distant line of evergreens. The simple observation hits harder than it should. The disembarking process moves with military efficiency. Names checked, gear accounted for. Medical inspections that feel more like formalities than genuine concern. The Navy doesn't waste time on sentiment. A young ensign hands you a packet, clean socks, soap, a fresh uniform voucher. The mundane items feel alien in your cracked hands. Barracks are that way, he says, pointing without making eye contact. Hot chow until 2100. You shuffle toward the designated area, your body moving on autopilot. The smells overwhelm first. Real bread baking, laundry soap, earth after rain. Simple things you'd stopped missing until they assaulted your senses anew. The barracks door creaks open to reveal rows of pristine cots. No hammocks, no dripping pipes, no condensation slick walls, just clean linens and actual pillows. The sight nearly undoes you. You claim a cot in the corner, sitting heavily as your knees finally acknowledge they're done pretending to be functional. The mattress feels absurdly soft, an indulgence your body can't quite process. Red collapses onto the adjacent cot with a groan. Christ almighty, he breathes, running a hand over the crisp sheets. Forgot what a real bed felt like. Neither of you moves for a long while. There's too much to process. The quiet, the stillness, the glorious absence of cold metal underfoot. Your body thrums with residual tension, not yet convinced the danger has passed. Eventually, hunger drives you to the mess hall. The walk there feels surreal. No rails to grip, no waves threatening to knock you sideways. Just solid earth that remains stubbornly, wonderfully still. The mess hall buzzes with subdued conversation. Men sit in clusters, eating slowly as if rediscovering the concept of hot meals. The food smells almost too rich after weeks of canned rations. Real meat, fresh vegetables, bread that doesn't double as building material. You take a tray and stare at the offerings, suddenly unsure what to choose. The cook notices your hesitation and piles a bit of everything onto your plate without comment. His silent understanding stings more than pity would have. Finding an empty table, you eat methodically. The flavors overwhelm. Too sharp, too complex. Your stomach protests the richness after so long surviving on basics. But you keep eating because that's what you do now. You follow routines until they start feeling normal again. Red joins you, his plate heaped even higher. He eats like a man afraid the food might disappear. Between bites, he nods toward a group of fresh-faced recruits at a nearby table. Look at them, he murmurs. Clean uniforms, full cheeks. Never heard a depth charge go off. You study the newcomers, their unmarked boots, their easy laughter, the way they sit upright instead of hunching against imaginary winds. They might as well be from another planet. One catches you staring and raises his coffee mug in tentative greeting. You manage a nod in return, struck by how young he looks. Was that you just weeks ago? The thought unsettles more than it should. After the meal, you're herded toward debriefing. The briefing room smells of fresh paint and waxed floors. Maps cover the walls, some marked with convoy routes, others with ominous clusters of red pins. You try not to study them too closely. An officer clears his throat at the front of the room. Welcome back, gentlemen. He begins, sounding about as emotional as a weather report. Preliminary reports indicate successful convoy operation despite losses. The clinical assessment hangs in the air. Successful operation, despite losses. As if the two concepts can coexist without friction. As if success means anything to the men who watched ships and friends vanish beneath the waves. The debrief continues with numbers and statistics. Tonnage delivered. Enemy contacts. Probable kills. The language sterilizes everything, reducing weeks of terror and exhaustion to neat columns on a clipboard. You stop listening after a while, focusing instead on the window. Real glass, not portholes, and the glimpse of grass outside. Something about seeing actual greenery feels profoundly healing, though you can't explain why. When dismissed, you wander outside, drawn to that patch of grass like a moth to flame. Sitting carefully, you run your fingers through the blades, marveling at their softness. The earth beneath smells rich and alive, nothing like the metallic tang of shipboard air. Red finds you there later, holding 2 steaming mugs. They've got real coffee, he announces, handing you one. Not that engine sludge we've been drinking. You take a cautious sip. The flavor explodes across your tongue, complex, almost floral. Nothing like the bitter tar you've grown accustomed to. For a ridiculous moment, your eyes sting. Night falls gently here. No sudden darkness, no creeping cold. Just a gradual dimming accompanied by cricket songs. You sit outside longer than intended, watching stars emerge one by one. They look different from land, brighter, more numerous, less threatening somehow. Eventually, you return to the barracks. The cot feels no more believable than before, but your body no longer cares. Sleep comes swiftly for once, not the fitful dozing of shipboard life, but true, deep unconsciousness. You dream of nothing at all. Morning arrives with sunlight streaming through actual windows. No klaxons, no shouted orders, just quiet and the distant sound of birdsong. The luxury of waking naturally, without urgency, feels almost sinful. You lie there for a while, savoring the novelty of stillness, before dressing in your fresh uniform. The clean fabric against your skin makes you feel like an imposter. Outside, the base bustles with mundane activity, supply trucks unloading, officers striding purposefully toward meetings, ground crews maintaining equipment. The war continues, but here, at least, it feels distant. You find Red near the mess hall, smoking an actual cigarette rather than the rationed shreds of tobacco you'd grown used to. He offers you one without speaking. You take it, though you've never been much of a smoker. The ritual matters more than the act. Mail call, someone announces nearby. The word spreads quickly, pulling men from all directions like ants to sugar. You don't expect anything, who would write, but join the crowd anyway. The sight of so many men clutching letters from home, their faces transforming as they read, proves unexpectedly moving. Red gets a parcel, a small, lumpy thing wrapped in brown paper. He opens it carefully, revealing a knitted sweater and a tin of homemade cookies. His expression softens in a way you've never seen before. "From my sister," he explains, holding up the sweater. It's hideous, mismatched colors, uneven stitching, but he treats it like fine silk. "She's got 5 kids. Don't know when she found time." You nod, struck by the simple domesticity of it. The war exists in parallel to a world where women knit sweaters and bake cookies, where children play unaware of U-boats and depth charges. Later, you're granted liberty to visit the nearby town. The walk there feels surreal. No convoy, no formation, just a group of sailors ambling down a country lane. The air smells of hay and damp earth. Birds flit between hedgerows. A farmer waves from his field. The town emerges gradually. First scattered cottages, then proper shops, finally a modest high street. The normalcy of it all jars something loose in your chest. Women push prams. Shopkeepers arrange displays. A blacksmith's hammer rings against an anvil. You pause outside a bakery, overwhelmed by the scent of fresh bread. The others continue ahead, but you linger, watching through the window as the baker shapes dough into loaves. The simple, timeless act holds your attention completely. "First time ashore?" an old fisherman asks, noting your uniform. He doesn't wait for an answer. Takes some getting used to, doesn't it? The quiet. You nod, though quiet isn't the word you'd choose. After weeks of engine noise and groaning metal, the town sounds vibrant, full of life rather than absence. The fisherman points toward a pub down the street. "Best ale this side of Edinburgh," he advises. "Tell him old Tom sent you." You take his suggestion, finding your crewmates already settled around a worn wooden table. The pub's interior feels wonderfully cramped after the ship's open decks, low ceilings, dark paneling, a fire crackling in the hearth. A barmaid brings tankards without asking. The ale tastes like nothing you've ever had. Malty, slightly bitter, utterly delicious. You drink slowly, savoring each sip, while the others swap increasingly exaggerated stories about the crossing. No one mentions the ship's lost. No one names the men who didn't make it. The war exists only in abstract between these walls, a thing to joke about rather than mourn. Hours pass in this gentle haze of alcohol and camaraderie. At some point, someone produces a harmonica, and the room erupts into off-key singing. You don't know the words, but hum along anyway, letting the music fill spaces inside you that seawater couldn't reach. When you finally stumble back to base under a sky full of stars, your stomach aches from laughing. The sensation is so foreign you almost don't recognize it. The barracks welcome you back with their strange new comforts. Real pillows, clean sheets, blessed silence. As you drift toward sleep, you realize with quiet amazement that for a few hours today, you didn't think about the war at all. Morning comes too soon, but gently. Sunlight, birdsong, the distant clatter of the mess hall preparing breakfast. No klaxons, no emergencies, just another day, a concept that still feels revolutionary. You dress slowly, relishing the simple act of choosing which socks to wear. The luxury of small decisions still feels novel after weeks of having every movement dictated by routine and survival. Outside, the base hums with purposeful activity. New convoys are being organized. Fresh crews arrive daily. The war machine grinds onward, but for now, you're temporarily outside its gears. A bulletin board near the mess hall lists assignments. You scan it without real concern. You've earned at least a week's leave before redeployment. But there's your name, third from the top, assigned to a new destroyer departing in 48 hours. The news should upset you. Instead, you feel nothing at all. The war has taught you this much. Dread changes nothing. Orders are orders. The Atlantic still waits. You find Red studying the same board, his expression unreadable. When he notices you, he just shrugs. Back to it. Then, he says, as if commenting on the weather. You nod. Back to it. The remaining hours of leave pass in a pleasant blur. You visit the town again, this time purchasing postcards you'll probably never send. You write a letter to your mother. Short, vague, carefully cheerful. You sit by the harbor watching fishing boats come and go, their mundane rhythms soothing in ways you can't articulate. That night, you pack your few belongings with methodical care. The fresh uniform, the hideous sweater Red insisted you take. Sister makes one for all my friends. The pocket knife you bought in town. It's not much, but it's more than you had when you arrived. Sleep comes fitfully this time, your body already anticipating the ship's motion. You dream of waves, not the terrifying swells of the North Atlantic, but gentle ripples lapping against a pebbled shore. At dawn, you report to the docks with the others. Your new ship waits, a sleek Fletcher-class destroyer fresh from the yards. Her decks gleam. Her lines look fast. She's beautiful in a way your old rust bucket never was. The boarding process feels eerily familiar. Muster, inspection, assignment to stations. The routines slot back into place like you never left. Within hours, you're back on watch, scanning familiar horizons for familiar threats. As the ship pulls away from the dock, you take one last look at the receding shoreline. Part of you wants to memorize every detail. The way sunlight catches the hills, the smell of earth and grass, the solid certainty of land beneath feet. But you don't, because this isn't an ending, just a pause between acts. The war isn't done with you yet. You turn your face toward the open sea, where the gulls are already gathering. The new ship cuts through the water with a precision your old rust bucket never managed. Her engines hum smoothly, her decks gleam under the morning sun, and her guns, freshly oiled and loaded, stand ready like sentinels. She's younger, faster, better equipped, but the ocean hasn't changed. The same gray swells, the same biting wind, the same endless horizon that offers no comfort, only the illusion of distance. You take your post at the forward rail, hands gripping cold metal out of habit rather than necessity. The routine settles over you like a second skin. Scan the water, watch for shadows, ignore the creeping numbness in your fingers. Somewhere below, the sonar pings, its rhythmic pulse a constant reminder that the Atlantic hasn't forgotten you. Red joins you after a while, chewing on a strip of dried meat. He doesn't speak, just nods toward the horizon, where the convoy forms up, merchant ships falling into line like ducklings behind their mother. Different ship, he mutters eventually. Same war. You don't answer. There's nothing to say. The first day passes without incident. The new crew moves with the crisp efficiency of men who haven't yet learned how tired they'll become. Officers bark orders with the confidence of those who've studied tactics but haven't yet seen them fail. You watch them with a quiet detachment, like a ghost observing the living. Night falls softly, the way it does at sea. No gradual dimming, just a slow surrender to darkness. The stars emerge, cold and indifferent. You take the first watch, listening to the ship's new sounds. The creak of fresh timber, the hum of untested engines, the unfamiliar footsteps of men whose names you don't yet know. At some point, a junior officer approaches, his uniform still crisp, his face unlined by salt and wind. Heard you were on the last run, he says, too casually. You nod. Bad. You consider lying. Then you shrug. Depends on your definition. He hesitates, weighing whether to press further. The sonar pings again, louder this time. 3 sharp echoes. Contact, he asks, suddenly alert. You shake your head. Just saying hello. He frowns, but doesn't question you. The Navy teaches its officers to trust instruments over instincts. You know better. The watch passes without incident. When you're relieved, you head below, where the new ship's mess hall smells of fresh paint and hope. The coffee's better here. Real beans, not the burnt powder you'd grown used to. You drink it slowly, savoring the heat, the bitterness, the simple luxury of something that doesn't taste like rust. A group of fresh-faced sailors sits nearby, laughing too loudly at a joke you don't hear. One of them, a kid with freckles and a crooked grin, catches your eye and raises his mug in salute. You return the gesture, struck by how young he looks. Was that you once? The thought slips away as the ship rolls gently beneath you, a reminder that the ocean doesn't care about nostalgia. Morning comes with mist clinging to the water like smoke. The convoy moves in tight formation, ships holding their positions with the precision of a well-rehearsed dance. You take your post again, binoculars in hand, scanning for the telltale shimmer of a periscope. Nothing. Just waves. Just wind. Just the endless, patient waiting. Red joins you mid-morning, smelling of soap and fresh linen. Slept like the dead, he admits, rubbing his eyes. Forgot what a real bunk felt like. You nod. The new ship's bunks are wider, softer, designed for comfort rather than necessity. It's a small mercy. Think we'll see action this run? He asks, voice low. You don't answer immediately. The Atlantic stretches ahead, calm and deceptively peaceful. But you know better than to trust it. Depends, you say finally, on whether they're hungry. Red grunts, understanding without explanation. The day unfolds with the same eerie quiet as the last. No alarms, no frantic shouts, just the steady thrum of engines and the occasional cry of gulls overhead. By afternoon, the newness of the ship has worn off, replaced by the familiar rhythms of convoy life. Check equipment, scan horizons, pretend you're not counting the hours until landfall. At dusk, the captain orders a drill. The klaxon shrieks, sending men scrambling to stations with the urgency of fresh recruits. You move slower, conserving energy, knowing the difference between practice and the real thing. The junior officer from before, the one who asked about your last run, watches you with narrowed eyes as you take your time securing the deck gun. You've done this before, he observes. You tighten a bolt without looking up. Once or twice. He hesitates, then leans closer. Any advice? You pause, considering. The ship rocks gently beneath you, a reminder of how quickly things can change. Don't get comfortable, you say finally. He frowns, expecting more. You don't give it to him. The drill ends without fanfare. The crew disperses, some grumbling about wasted time, others visibly relieved it wasn't real. You linger at the rail, watching the sun sink into the water, staining the waves red. Red finds you there, a steaming mug in each hand. Fresh batch, he says, offering one. Cook's experimenting. You take it, inhaling the rich, earthy scent. Real coffee, not the usual swill. A small luxury, but one you've learned to appreciate. Think they'll hit us tonight? Red asks after a long silence. You sip the coffee, letting the heat spread through your chest. Maybe. He nods, accepting the uncertainty. Night falls completely, wrapping the ship in darkness. The running lights glow faintly, their reflections dancing on the water like ghosts. You take the first watch, listening to the new ship's sounds, the creak of her hull, the hum of her engines, the quiet murmurs of men who don't yet know how to whisper. At some point, the junior officer returns, his earlier confidence replaced by something quieter. Mind if I join you? You shrug. He leans against the rail, staring into the dark. They told us it would be different, he admits after a while. Faster ships. Better sonar. Said the U-boats wouldn't dare. You don't answer. The sonar pings again. 3 sharp echoes, then silence. The officer tenses. Was that? Just saying hello, you repeat. He exhales, running a hand through his hair. How do you stand it? You consider the question. The cold. The waiting. The constant, gnawing uncertainty. You don't, you say finally. You just get used to it. He nods slowly, absorbing the lesson. Above you, the stars will silently, indifferent to the small dramas playing out below. The watch passes without incident. When you're relieved, you head below, where the new ship's bunks promise actual sleep. But as you lie there, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and groans of fresh timber, you realize something unsettling. You miss the old rust bucket, not because she was better, but because you knew her, knew which boards creaked underfoot, knew which pipes leaked when the temperature dropped, knew her like a living thing, flawed but familiar. This ship is a stranger, and in the Atlantic, strangers don't last long. You close your eyes, letting the hum of the engines lull you into something resembling sleep. Tomorrow will come, and with it, the gulls. Dawn arrives like a hesitant guest, pale light creeping across the water, tentative and gray. You're already at your post when the sun breaches the horizon, its weak glow doing little to chase the chill from your bones. The coffee in your mug has gone cold, but you drink it anyway. Waste is a sin at sea. Red joins you, his face still creased from sleep. "Anything?" he asks, rubbing his eyes. You shake your head. "Just water." The convoy moves steadily, ships holding formation with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The new destroyer cuts through the waves effortlessly, her engines purring where your old ship used to groan. It should be reassuring. It isn't. Too quiet. Too smooth. Like the calm before the storm. The morning passes without incident. You scrape rust that isn't there, tighten bolts that don't need tightening, and pretend not to notice the way the junior officers keep glancing at you, like they're waiting for some sign, some veteran wisdom to reveal itself. At noon, the mess serves actual meat, not the canned, salted mystery you'd grown used to, but something that might have once been pork. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, while the new crew chatters around you like excited schoolboys. One of them, the freckle-faced kid from before, leans across the table. "Heard you sank a U-boat," he says, eyes wide. You pause, fork halfway to your mouth. "Heard wrong." The kid blinks. "But the others said." "Rumors." Red cuts in, tearing a piece of bread with his teeth. "Like seagull shit. Plenty of it, and none of it useful." The kid flushes, but doesn't back down. "So what's it really like when they attack?" The mess goes quiet. Even the clatter of trays seems to pause. You set your fork down carefully. "Fast," you say finally. Quiet, then loud. The kid waits for more. There isn't any. The afternoon brings clouds, thick and heavy, rolling in from the east like a warning. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of rain and something sharper, something metallic. Storm coming. You feel it in your joints before the captain announces it. The ship begins to roll differently, her movements less predictable, more deliberate. The crew scrambles to secure loose gear, batten hatches, prepare for the inevitable. You've done this before, many times, but the new crew hasn't. You watch them fumble with ropes, over-tighten knots, misjudge the rhythm of the waves. The junior officer, the one who asked about your last run, barks orders with more confidence than competence. Red catches your eye and shakes his head. "Green as grass," he mutters. You don't disagree. The first real wave hits just before dusk, a towering wall of water that slams into the bow with enough force to send half the crew stumbling. The kid, the freckle-faced one, loses his footing completely, sliding across the deck until he crashes into the rail. You grab his arm before he can go over. Eyes open, you snap, hauling him upright. Or you'll drown before the Germans get a chance at you. He nods, face pale, and scrambles back to his post. The storm worsens as night falls. Rain comes in horizontal sheets, stinging any exposed skin like needles. The ship groans under the assault, her timbers protesting the abuse. You take your watch at the forward rail, lashed securely to the ship to avoid being swept overboard. The ocean is a churning, black mass, alive and angry. Then, through the chaos, a sound. Not the wind, not the rain. A ping. The sonar cuts through the storm's roar. 3 sharp pulses, then silence. You stiffen, scanning the water despite the futility. If there's a U-boat out there, you won't see it. Not in this. But it doesn't matter. Because they'll see you. The klaxon sounds, its shrill scream barely audible over the storm. Men scramble to stations, their movements clumsy with panic and inexperience. The junior officer appears at your side, his face slick with rain. "What do we do?" he shouts. You don't answer immediately. The ship bucks beneath you, a reminder of how little control any of you really have. "Drop charges?" he presses. You shake your head. Waste of time. His eyes widen. "But, can't hit what you can't find," you yell over the wind. And in this, they're as blind as we are. He hesitates, torn between protocol and pragmatism. The sonar pings again, closer this time. "All hands." The captain's voice booms over the intercom. Battle stations. The deck erupts into chaos. Men run in every direction, some toward their posts, others, the greener ones, simply running. You stay where you are, lashed to the rail, watching the storm. Red appears beside you, his face grim. Think they'll try it. You don't need to ask who he means. Depends, you say, on how hungry they are. The storm rages around you, the ship heaving like a wounded animal. The sonar pings again, 3 sharp notes, then nothing. Waiting. Always waiting. Hours pass. The storm doesn't ease. The sonar doesn't sound again. False alarm. Lost contact. Or just patience. You don't know. And not knowing is worse. By dawn, the storm begins to weaken. The rain lessens. The waves, while still towering, come farther apart. The crew emerges from below decks like survivors of a bombing raid. Pale, shaken, exhausted. The kid, the freckle-faced one, finds you near the mess hall. His hands are shaking. He trails off, unable to find the word. You hand him your coffee. Just weather, you say? Wait till you meet the Germans. He gulps the coffee like it's salvation. The day passes in a haze of fatigue and tension. The storm may have eased, but the threat hasn't. Every shadow in the water could be a periscope. Every odd sound could be an engine. The crew moves differently now, less like boys playing sailor, more like men who've glimpsed the truth. The junior officer approaches you again at dusk. His uniform is rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. You knew, he says quietly, that they wouldn't attack in the storm. You shrug. Guessed. He studies you for a long moment. How many runs have you done? You don't answer. The number doesn't matter. Only the outcome. Night falls again, this time without the storm's fury. The sea is still rough, but manageable. The crew takes their posts with more confidence, more awareness. They're learning. Too fast. You take the first watch, scanning the water out of habit more than hope. The stars emerge slowly, their light weak but constant. Red joins you after a while, chewing on a strip of dried beef. Kid puked 4 times during the storm, he says conversationally. You grunt. Better over the side than in his boots. He chuckles, then sobers. Think they're still out there? You don't need to ask who he means. Always. He nods, accepting the truth. The watch passes without incident. When you're relieved, you head below, where the ship's newness no longer feels alien, just temporary. You sleep fitfully, dreaming of storms and silence. Morning comes too soon. The crew moves with purpose now, their earlier hesitation replaced by grim determination. Even the kid, the freckle-faced one, stands taller, his hands steadier. War does that. Steals your innocence. Teaches you to fear the right things. The day unfolds with eerie calm. The ocean is almost peaceful, its swells gentle, its surface smooth. The convoy moves steadily, ships holding formation with practiced ease. Too easy. You don't trust it. Neither does Red. Feels like a trap, he mutters as you scan the horizon. You don't disagree. The sonar pings at noon. 3 sharp echoes, then nothing. The crew tenses but doesn't panic. They're learning. The junior officer approaches, his face set. Orders. You glance at the water, then at the sky. Wait. He hesitates. We could drop charges. And tell them exactly where we are? You shake your head. Let them wonder too. He exhales sharply but doesn't argue. The sonar doesn't sound again. Waiting. Always waiting. By dusk, the tension has thickened like fog. Men speak in hushed tones, jump at shadows, check their gear too often. The kid, the freckle-faced one, finds you at the rail. What if they don't come? He asks quietly. You don't look at him. Then we got lucky. He hesitates. And if they do, you finally meet his gaze. Then we don't. He swallows hard, but nods. Night falls. The stars emerge. The ocean stretches endlessly, its surface gleaming under the moonlight. Beautiful. Deadly. You take your post, listening to the ship's steady hum, the crew's quiet murmurs, the ever-present whisper of the sea. Waiting. Always waiting. Then, a ping. Then another. Then silence. You straighten, hands tightening on the rail. Red appears beside you, his face grim. Here we go. The sonar pings again, closer this time. 3 sharp pulses, then silence. No one speaks. No one needs to. The crew moves with quiet efficiency now, their earlier panic replaced by something harder, sharper. The kid, the freckle-faced one, takes his post at the deck gun, hands steady despite the white-knuckle grip on the trigger. The junior officer barks orders, his voice steadier than before. Depth charges ready. Starboard side. You don't correct him. Let him learn. The sonar pings again. Then again. Closer. Always closer. Then, a shadow in the water. Not a wave. Not a trick of moonlight. Something sleek. Something dark. Moving just beneath the surface. The U-boat. You see it for only a second before it vanishes again, swallowed by the ocean's black depths. But a second is enough. Contact, someone shouts. Starboard bow. The klaxon wails, sharp and sudden. The crew scrambles, their movements frantic but focused. Depth charges are rolled into position. Guns are manned. The ship turns hard, her engines groaning under the strain. You stay at the rail, eyes fixed on the water, waiting, always waiting. Then, a streak of silver, a ripple cutting through the waves. Torpedo, hard to port. The captain roars over the intercom. The ship heels violently, her deck tilting beneath your feet. You grab the rail, fingers digging into cold metal as the world tilts sideways. The torpedo misses by meters, close enough to see the wake, close enough to taste the salt spray it kicks up as it passes. The crew exhales as one. But it's not over. The sonar pings again. Another shadow. Another torpedo. This one comes from port side. A perfect ambush. Brace, someone screams. The impact rocks the ship like a hammer blow. A deafening roar fills the air as the hull shudders, metal screaming in protest. The deck bucks beneath you, throwing men to their knees. Then silence. For one terrible, weightless moment, nothing happens. Then the alarms start. Damage report. The junior officer yells, his voice cracking. The replies come in fragments, flooding in the engine room. Fire in the galley, casualties below decks. But you're already moving. The U-boat won't wait. Depth charges, you shout, shoving past stunned crewmen to reach the aft racks. Now, the charges roll into the water. 3, 4, 5. Their splashes barely audible over the chaos. Then, boom. The first detonation shakes the ship like a toy. Boom. The second sends a geyser of water skyward, lit from within by the explosion's fury. Boom. The third hits something. You know it before the shout goes up. The way the water bulges, then erupts in a froth of bubbles and oil. A cheer rises from the crew, raw and desperate. But you don't join in, because the ocean doesn't give second chances, and neither do U-boats. The ship lists slightly, her wounds not fatal but deep. The crew scrambles to contain the damage. Pumps whine, hoses snake across the deck. Men shout over the din of machinery and pain. The kid, the freckle-faced one, appears at your side, his face smeared with soot. "We got it," he says, breathless. "We got the bastard." You glance at the spreading oil slick, the bubbles still rising lazily to the surface. Maybe, or maybe it's just another trick. The night wears on. The damage control teams work tirelessly, their faces grim under the emergency lights. The wounded are carried below, some moaning, some eerily silent. The junior officer finds you near the bridge, his uniform torn, his hands shaking. "We need to regroup with the convoy," he says. "They'll leave us behind if we can't keep up." You nod. The rules haven't changed. No one gets left behind. Until they do. Dawn comes slowly, the sky bleeding from black to gray. The ship limps forward, her engines protesting but holding. The convoy is still visible on the horizon, a scattered line of shadows against the lightning sky. Too far. Always too far. The crew moves like ghosts, their earlier triumph faded into exhaustion. The kid sits slumped against a bulkhead, his eyes hollow. Red joins you at the rail, chewing on a stale biscuit. Think that was the only one. You don't answer. The ocean stretches ahead, vast and indifferent. Somewhere beneath those waves, something waits. Always waiting. The damaged destroyer limps through the swells, her starboard list just pronounced enough to make every step feel like walking uphill. The crew moves slower now, not from exhaustion, though they've got plenty of that, but from the unspoken understanding that the Atlantic isn't done with them yet. Red leans against the rail beside you, squinting at the oil slick still spreading behind you. "Think we got it?" he asks, though he already knows the answer. You don't bother responding. The ocean doesn't give up its dead easily. The kid, the freckle-faced one, approaches cautiously, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "They said we're 3 hours behind the convoy," he mutters. "If we can't make speed, we'll make speed." The junior officer interrupts, appearing suddenly behind him. His uniform is streaked with grease, his eyes bloodshot, but his voice carries a newfound steel. Engine room reports temporary patches holding. We'll be back in formation by dusk. The kid nods, desperate to believe him. You say nothing. The ship groans beneath you, a sound that has nothing to do with the waves. The day passes in a haze of repairs and watch rotations. The crew works with quiet determination, sealing leaks, reinforcing bulkheads, clearing debris. The wounded are tended to below decks, some with bandages and morphine, others with prayers and silence. By afternoon, the destroyer has regained some speed. Though her movements are sluggish, her response is delayed. The convoy remains visible on the horizon, a scattered line of smudges against the gray sky, but no one mentions how the distance hasn't closed. No one needs to. Red finds you near the stern, where the depth charge racks stand half empty. Heard the captain radioed for escort, he says, lighting a cigarette with hands that barely shake. No response yet. You nod. The rules haven't changed. No one turns back. No one slows down. The kid appears again, this time with 2 mugs of coffee. He hands one to you, the other to Red. Cook says it's the last of the good stuff, he offers, trying for a smile. You take it, the heat seeping into your fingers. You check the sonar? He blinks. No. What? You sip the coffee. No reason. But there is. Because the ocean is too quiet. No gulls. No sonar pings. Just the steady thrum of damaged engines and the occasional cry of orders across the deck. The kid lingers, shifting his weight. You think there's more out there? Red exhales smoke, watching it curl into the salt air. Always. Dusk comes softly, the sky bleeding from gray to black. The convoy's running lights glow faintly in the distance, tiny pinpricks of hope against the gathering dark. The junior officer approaches, his face drawn. Captain wants all hands on deck, he says quietly. We're falling behind. You already knew. The crew gathers amidships, their faces gaunt under the emergency lights. The captain stands on the bridge wing, his silhouette rigid against the darkening sky. We've done all we can, he says, his voice carrying easily over the wind. But we won't reach the convoy tonight. A murmur ripples through the men. The rules haven't changed, he continues. They won't slow for us. But we're not done yet. He pauses, scanning the horizon. We'll shadow them through the night. Stay close enough to signal if needed. And at dawn, he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. The crew disperses, returning to stations with quiet resignation. The kid lingers near the rail, staring at the distant lights. They'd really leave us? He asks, voice small. You don't answer. The night passes in tense silence. The destroyer trails the convoy like a wounded animal, her engines laboring, her wounded flank riding low in the water. The crew takes double watches, scanning the dark for shadows that may or may not be there. You take the midnight rotation, standing at the forward rail with binoculars pressed to your eyes. The convoy's lights flicker occasionally between swells. There, then gone, then there again. Like fireflies, like targets. Red joins you halfway through the watch, his breath fogging in the cold. Heard something on the radio, he mutters. Another convoy hit 50 miles northeast of us. Lost 3 ships before the escorts drove them off. You lower the binoculars. How many U-boats? Don't know, but they're hunting in packs now. You glance at the dark water. Always hunting. The watch ends without incident. When you're relieved, you head below, where the ship's wounds are more pronounced. Bulkheads braced with timber, pipes hissing steam, the acrid scent of welding lingering in the air. You find an empty cot near the engine room and collapse onto it, too tired to care about the noise or the heat. Sleep comes in fits, brief, restless bursts haunted by dreams of sinking ships and silent sonar. Dawn arrives with pale light filtering through the haze. The convoy is still ahead, though the distance has grown. The destroyer struggles onward, her crew moving like ghosts in the gray morning light. The kid approaches you at the rail, his face drawn. They're not slowing, he says, though it's not a question. You shake your head. He exhales sharply, his breath fogging in the cold. What happens if we can't keep up? You don't answer. The ocean does. A ping. Faint at first, almost lost in the noise of the engines. Then again, closer. The crew freezes, heads turning toward the sonar station. The junior officer appears, his face pale. Contact, he confirms. Bearing 190. Closing. The captain's voice crackles over the intercom. All hands. Battle stations. The klaxon wails, sharp and sudden. The kid stumbles into action, scrambling toward his post at the deck gun. Red moves slower, his eyes locked on the horizon. Not like last time, he mutters. No, this time, you're alone. The sonar pings again. 3 sharp pulses, then silence. Waiting. Always waiting. Then, a streak in the water. Torpedo. Hard to starboard. The destroyer lurches, her wounded hull protesting the sudden strain. The torpedo misses by meters, its wake cutting through the swell like a blade. But the U-boat isn't done. Another ping. Another shadow. The crew scrambles, their movements frantic. Depth charges are rolled into position. Guns are manned. But the ship is slow. Too slow. The second torpedo hits aft, a thunderous impact that shakes the deck beneath your feet. The destroyer shudders violently, her stern rising slightly before slamming back down. Alarm scream. Men shout. The kid stumbles, catching himself on the rail. What do we do? He yells, voice cracking. You grab his arm, hauling him toward the lifeboats. We survive. The ocean doesn't care about heroes. Only survivors. Chaos erupts across the deck. Shouts, alarms, the groan of metal under stress. The destroyer lists sharply to starboard, her wounded flank drinking in the Atlantic's cold embrace. Abandoned ship. The order ripples through the crew like an electric shock. Men scramble for lifeboats, some moving with practiced efficiency, others frozen in disbelief until someone shoves them into action. You drag the kid toward the nearest raft, his arm trembling under your grip. Move, you snarl, and this time he does. Red appears beside you, his face grim. Engine room's flooding. He reports, voice barely audible over the din, she's going down fast. You nod. You already knew. The lifeboats are lowered with frantic haste, their davits squealing under the strain. The kid climbs in first, his movements clumsy with panic. You follow, then Red, then a handful of others, mostly engine room crew, their faces blackened by grease and smoke. The raft hits the water with a jolt, bobbing violently as the destroyer groans behind you. The ropes are cut, the raft drifts free, and then silence. Not the absence of sound, but the sudden, terrible quiet of men watching their ship die. The destroyer settles deeper, her bow rising slightly as the stern disappears beneath the waves. Steam hisses from ruptured pipes. Debris floats to the surface. Life jackets, crates, a single boot. No one speaks. The kid stares, his mouth slightly open. Red lights a cigarette with hands that don't shake. You watch the water, because the U-boat is still out there, and it knows exactly where you are. The raft drifts for what feels like hours, though the sun hasn't moved much. The convoy is long gone. Its running lights vanished over the horizon. No one says what you're all thinking, that they won't turn back. That no one does. The kid finally breaks the silence. What now? Red exhales smoke. We wait. For what? Either rescue, you say, scanning the horizon. Or them. The kid swallows hard, but doesn't ask which is more likely. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, gray, cold, indifferent. The raft rocks gently, its movement small compared to the destroyer's violent death throes. You count the supplies automatically. 6 ration tins, 2 canteens of fresh water, a flare gun with 3 shells. Enough for a day, maybe 2 if you're careful. If the weather holds. If the U-boats don't come back. Red passes the cigarette to the kid, who takes it with hesitant fingers. First rule of survival, Red says, watching him cough on the smoke. Panic later. The kid nods, though his hands still tremble. Dusk comes softly, the sky bleeding from gray to purple to black. The temperature drops sharply, the cold seeping into your bones despite the layers of wool and canvas. The kid shivers violently. How long do you think? You don't answer. The ocean doesn't care about guesses. Night falls completely, the stars emerging one by one. The raft drifts, its movements dictated by currents you can't see. The destroyer is gone now. Just a memory, a stain on the water. The kid dozes fitfully, his head lolling against the raft's edge. Red keeps watch, his eyes scanning the dark with quiet intensity. You take the first shift, listening to the water lap against the raft's sides. Then, a sound. Not waves, not wind. A splash. You stiffen, hand going to the flare gun. Red notices immediately, his posture shifting. What? You shake your head, listening. Another splash. Closer this time. Then silence. The kid stirs, blinking sleepily. What's wrong? Nothing, Red says, too quickly. Go back to sleep. But you know, and Red knows, the U-boat is surfacing, not to attack, to watch. The kid sits up, rubbing his eyes. Is it? A shadow emerges from the dark, long, low, sleek. The U-boat's conning tower breaks the surface first, water streaming off its sides. Then the hull, black and glistening in the moonlight. No one moves. No one breathes. The U-boat drifts closer, its diesels rumbling softly. A hatch opens on the conning tower. A figure emerges, silhouetted against the night, binoculars raised. Watching. Always watching. The kid whimpers, his fingers digging into the raft's fabric. Red's hand closes around the flare gun, though neither of you say what you're both thinking, that a flare won't save you. That nothing will. But the U-boat doesn't fire, doesn't approach, just watches. Then, as silently as it appeared, it begins to submerge. The conning tower slipping beneath the waves, the hull following like a ghost returning to the deep. The kid exhales sharply. Why didn't they? Sport, Red mutters, though he doesn't sound convinced. You say nothing, because you know the truth. The U-boat didn't need to kill you. The ocean will do that for them. Dawn comes slowly, the sky lightening by degrees. The raft drifts, its occupants silent, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and fear. The kid checks the supplies again, counting and recounting as if the numbers might change. We should ration, he announces, though no one argued. Red nods, passing him a canteen. Sip. Don't gulp. The kid obeys, his throat working as he forces himself to stop after a single swallow. You scan the horizon, searching for smoke, for ships, for anything that isn't water. Nothing. Just waves. Just sky. The day passes in a haze of thirst and boredom. The raft drifts. The sun climbs, then descends. The kid talks sometimes, about home, about his mother's cooking, about anything but the ocean stretching endlessly around you. Red listens, occasionally adding a grunt or a one-word response. You watch the water, because the U-boat might be gone, but the ocean isn't. Night falls again. The temperature drops. The kid shivers violently, his teeth chattering loud enough to hear. Red shrugs out of his pea coat and tosses it at him. Put that on. The kid hesitates. But you'll... I've survived worse, Red lies smoothly. You don't comment. The second night is worse than the first. The cold seeps deeper. The thirst grows sharper. The kid's chatter fades into silence, then into shallow, uneven breathing. Red checks his pulse at one point, then meets your eyes and shakes his head slightly. Not yet, but soon. Dawn comes again, the sky pale and cloudless. The kid doesn't wake. His breathing is slow, his skin waxy. Red tries the canteen again, tipping a few drops between the kid's lips. Most of it runs down his chin. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. The sun climbs higher, its heat a cruel contrast to the night's cold. The kid stirs occasionally, mumbling incoherently before slipping back into unconsciousness. Red watches him with an expression you can't read. You watch the horizon, because that's all there is. Then, a sound. Not waves. Not wind. Engines. You sit up sharply, straining your ears. Red notices immediately. What? You shake your head, listening. There. Faint but unmistakable. The distant thrum of ship engines. The kid doesn't stir. Red scrambles for the flare gun, his hands shaking for the first time. Where? You point northeast, where the sound is strongest. Red fires the flare, a single, brilliant arc of red against the blue sky. You wait. The engines don't change pitch. Don't slow. The flare burns out. Silence returns. Red swears viciously, tossing the flare gun aside. You keep watching, because sometimes ships don't see flares. Sometimes they don't want to. The kid murmurs something unintelligible, his fingers twitching. Red checks his pulse again, his expression grim. You look away. The sun climbs higher. The engines fade. The ocean wins again. Then, a new sound, higher pitched, faster. Aircraft. You spot it before Red does, a tiny speck in the distance, growing larger by the second. A patrol plane. Red grabs the last flare, his hand steadier now. This better work, he mutters, firing it skyward. The flare bursts directly in the plane's path, its glow impossible to miss. The plane banks sharply, circling once before tipping its wings in acknowledgement. Red whoops, shaking the kid's shoulder. Hey, wake up. We're getting out of here. The kid doesn't respond. The plane disappears into the distance, but you know what comes next. Rescue, or something close enough. You watch the horizon, waiting, always waiting. Then, smoke. A thin line on the horizon, growing thicker by the minute. A ship, coming for you. Red laughs, a raw, broken sound. Would you look at that? You don't smile, because the kid isn't moving, and the ocean never gives back what it takes. The ship emerges from the horizon like a mirage. First a smudge of smoke, then a silhouette, then the unmistakable shape of a destroyer cutting through the swells toward you. Red stands abruptly, nearly capsizing the raft in his haste. Here, over here, he bellows, waving his arms like a madman despite the fact that the ship is already turning in your direction. You remain seated, one hand resting on the kid's shoulder. His breathing has slowed to shallow, uneven gasps. His skin is cold. The destroyer closes the distance with agonizing slowness, her hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. A rescue detail assembles on her deck, tossing lines and preparing a boarding net. Red grabs one of the ropes, hauling the raft closer with frantic strength. Almost there, kid, he mutters, though the kid hasn't stirred in hours. The destroyer's crew lowers a stretcher first, their movements efficient. You help secure the kid onto it, his body frighteningly light in your arms. They haul him up swiftly, then drop the net for you and Red. Climbing is harder than it should be. Your fingers are numb, your limbs heavy with exhaustion. The destroyer's deck feels impossibly solid underfoot after days of drifting. A medic rushes past you to the kid, pressing fingers to his throat before barking orders. The crew parts to let them through, their faces grim. Red sags against the rail, his laughter gone. He'll make it, he says, though it sounds more like a question. You don't answer. The destroyer's captain, a lean man with salt and pepper hair, approaches, his expression unreadable. You're from the Haze? Red nods. Sank 2 days ago. Torpedo aft. The captain's jaw tightens. We're the only ship that turned back. Of course, because no one else would. The crew leads you below, where the air is thick with the scent of fresh coffee and antiseptic. A steward hands you a blanket and a mug, his eyes lingering on your salt-cracked lips and sunburned skin. Mess is open if you're hungry, he offers. Red accepts immediately, vanishing toward the galley with the steward in tow. You stay by the ladder, sipping the coffee, real coffee, hot and strong, and listening to the distant murmur of the medic's voice. The kid doesn't make it. You know before they tell you. Before the ship's bell tolls once, sharp and final. Before Red reappears, his face ashen, his hands clenched into fists. Bastards, he snarls, though it's unclear who he means. The U-boat crew, the ocean, the war itself. You finish the coffee in silence. The destroyer turns back toward the convoy, her engines thrumming steadily. The crew moves around you with quiet efficiency, their glances flickering toward you and Red with something between pity and unease. Survivors are bad luck. Everyone knows it. You're given bunks in the aft compartment, far from the crew's usual quarters. The blankets are clean, the mattresses thick. Luxury by convoy standards. Red collapses onto his without a word, asleep in seconds. You lie awake, listening to the ship's unfamiliar sounds. The hum of her engines, the creak of her bulkheads, the distant chatter of men who haven't yet learned to whisper. Morning comes too soon. The destroyer has rejoined the convoy overnight, her sleek hull sliding into formation like she was never gone. No one mentions the haze. No one mentions the kid. Red wakes with a groan, scrubbing a hand over his face. Where are we? Back with the herd, you say? He sits up slowly, his movements stiff. What now? You shrug. The question doesn't need an answer. The war isn't done with you yet. The destroyer's captain summons you to his cabin after breakfast. A small, neat space dominated by charts and a well-worn desk. He studies you for a long moment before speaking. You've got two choices, he says. We can drop you at the next port with the other survivors. Or you can stay aboard. Red frowns. Doing what? The captain's smile is thin. Whatever needs doing. We're short-handed as it is. You exchange glances with Red. Neither of you says it, but the truth hangs between you anyway. Ports mean paperwork. Means questions. Means someone having to write a letter to the kid's mother. Staying aboard means silence. Means forgetting. Red nods first. We'll stay. The captain looks at you. You don't hesitate. Aye. The paperwork is signed within the hour. You're given fresh uniforms, ill-fitting but clean, and assigned to the deck crew. No one asks about your qualifications. No one cares. Bodies fill bunks. That's all that matters. The days blur together. You learn the destroyer's rhythms quickly, her quirks, her moods, the way she handles in heavy swells. She's younger than the haze, faster, but no less temperamental. Red takes to the work with grim determination, throwing himself into every task like he's trying to outrun memory. The crew gives him a wide berth, their usual chatter dying when he passes. You don't mind the silence. The convoy pushes onward, its formation tightening as the days pass. The weather holds, gray skies, choppy seas, but no storms. The kind of crossing that would have been uneventful once. Now, every shadow in the water is a U-boat. Every odd sound is an engine. Every night is spent waiting for the ping of sonar. But the attacks don't come. Not yet. The destroyer's original crew treats you and Red with cautious respect, their curiosity warring with superstition. Survivors are bad luck, but survivors who volunteer to go back out, that's something else entirely. The junior officers, barely older than the kid was, watch you with something like awe, as if you've done something heroic rather than simply failed to die. You don't correct them. Let them learn the truth on their own. The days pass. The convoy holds. The ocean stretches endlessly ahead, its surface broken only by the occasional gull or patch of floating debris. You take your watches without complaint, standing at the rail for hours, scanning the horizon for shadows that never appear. Waiting, always waiting. Then, land. First a smudge on the horizon, then a proper shape. Green hills, white cliffs, the distant glint of a lighthouse. England. The crew cheers, their voices raw with relief. Even the captain allows himself a small smile, his shoulders loosening slightly. Red leans against the rail beside you, his face unreadable. Made it, he mutters. You nod. The kid didn't. But that's the way of things. The convoy disperses as it reaches the harbor, ships peeling off toward their assigned docks. The destroyer glides in with practiced ease, her crew lining the rails as the mooring lines are thrown. The port is chaos, cranes swinging, trucks rumbling, dockworkers shouting over the din. It smells of fish and diesel and wet rope, the scents so familiar they ache. Red inhales deeply, his eyes closed. Christ, I missed that. You don't ask what that is. The crew is granted liberty almost immediately, spilling onto the docks with the frantic energy of men who've been too long at sea. Red vanishes into the crowd without a backward glance, his stride purposeful. You linger on the dock, watching the ship that carried you here. She's smaller in port than she seemed at sea, her hull streaked with salt and rust. A temporary home, but not yours. The Navy doesn't let survivors stay together. You know the orders will come soon. New assignments, new ships, new crews who'll glance at you with that same uneasy respect. But for now, there's land beneath your feet. And time. Always time. You turn away from the ship and walk into the port, the sounds of the war fading behind you. For now. The port town unfolds before you in a haze of noise and movement. Sailors spilling from taverns, merchants hawking wares, military police herding drunk crewmen back toward their ships. It's too much after months at sea. The smells alone overwhelm. Fried fish, tobacco smoke, perfume from the women lingering near alleyways. Your boots feel leaden on the cobblestones, your balance still attuned to phantom waves. You find Red in a dim-lit pub called the Mariner's Rest, already halfway through a pint of dark ale. He doesn't look up as you slide onto the stool beside him, just nudges a second tankard toward you. The foam has gone flat. Started without you, he mutters. You drink anyway. The ale is bitter, warm from sitting, but it's alcohol. That's enough. The pub buzzes around you. Laughter, clinking glasses, an off-key piano in the corner. No one pays you any mind. Just two more sailors among hundreds, your sunken eyes and salt-stiffened hair blending into the crowd. Red orders another round without asking. The barmaid, a redhead with chipped nail polish, lingers a moment too long, her gaze flicking between you. Red flashes her a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. She leaves without a word. Think they'll give us another ship? Red asks when she's gone. You trace a finger through the condensation on the table. They always do. He snorts. Might stick us on a tugboat after that stunt. The haze is an unspoken weight between you. Survivors get reassigned. Survivors get watched. But the Navy needs bodies more than it fears bad luck. The second round arrives. Red downs half in one go. Heard the Caldwell's short 12 men after their last run. You know what that means. Fresh casualties. Fresh bunks to fill. The piano launches into a raucous sea shanty. A group of merchant sailors near the hearth join in, their voices slurred but enthusiastic. One misses his chair entirely, collapsing to the floor to uproarious laughter. Red watches them with something like disgust. Fucking amateurs. You don't disagree. The night wears on. The pub grows louder, smokier, the air thick with the scent of sweat and spilled beer. Red switches to whiskey after the fourth pint. You keep pace with ale, the buzz in your veins a poor substitute for real numbness. At some point, a fight breaks out near the door. A British sailor and an American arguing over a woman, over cards, over nothing at all. Chairs topple. Glass shatters. The military police arrive within minutes, truncheons swinging. Red watches the chaos with detached interest. Should have joined the MPs, he muses. Get to hit people legally. You finish your drink. Too much paperwork. He barks a laugh, genuine this time, and signals for another round. The barmaid ignores him. Dawn finds you both on the docks, watching the sun rise over the harbor. The ale has soured in your stomach. The whiskey left a metallic taste in your mouth. The ships are already stirring. Cranes loading cargo. Engines firing up. Crews preparing for the morning tide. Red lights a cigarette with unsteady hands. They'll post assignments today. You nod. The Navy doesn't let survivors linger. The first gulls of the day circle overhead, their cries sharp against the growing rumble of the port. You watch them without thinking, then catch yourself. Old habits. Red follows your gaze. Bastards followed us all the way to shore, he mutters. You don't answer. The naval office opens at 0800 sharp. A line has already formed. Haggard-looking sailors clutching transfer papers. Fresh-faced recruits with duffels slung over their shoulders. Officers striding past them all without a glance. You and Red take your place at the back. No one speaks. No one needs to. The line inches forward. The sun climbs higher. The port grows louder around you. The rhythm of war grinding onward. At the front, a harried clerk stamps papers without looking up. Name: Petty Officer James Weldon, Red says. The clerk flips through a ledger. Caldwell, destroyer, sails with the morning tide. He shoves a packet across the desk, orders, a meal voucher, a train ticket to the next port. Red takes it without comment. The clerk turns to you. Name. You give it. More ledger flipping. The clerk's finger stops halfway down the page. His expression flickers. Ah. Red stiffens beside you. The clerk clears his throat. You're to report to the Reed. Coastal Patrol. Leaves in 2 hours. You take the papers. The Reed isn't a destroyer. Isn't even a proper warship. Just an old cutter repurposed for harbor duty. A punishment. Or a mercy. Red glares at the clerk. There's been a mistake. The clerk doesn't look up. No mistake. You pocket the orders before Red can argue. The Navy doesn't make mistakes. Only decisions. Outside, the gulls are louder. The sun is brighter. The Caldwell looms at the far end of the dock, her crew swarming like ants. Red stares at her for a long moment. I'll talk to the captain. Get you reassigned. You shake your head. Don't bother. He turns on you, sudden and sharp. The fuck you mean, don't bother? You think I'm just going to? Yes. The word hangs between you. Red's jaw works. His hands clench. For a second, you think he might hit you. Might scream. Might do anything but what comes next. Then he exhales. God damn it. You don't apologize. There's nothing to apologize for. The Caldwell's whistle blows. 2 short, sharp bursts. Final call for boarding. Red doesn't move. You do. You stick out your hand. Old habit. Older ritual. Red stares at it like he's never seen a handshake before. Then he grabs it, his grip crushing. You're a bastard. You know that? You nod. All right. He snorts. Releases your hand. Like hell you will. The whistle blows again. Red hesitates a second longer. Then he turns, his duffel slung over one shoulder, and walks toward the Caldwell without looking back. You watch him go. Watch him vanish into the crowd of sailors. Watch the gangplank rise behind him. The gulls cry overhead. You turn away. The Reed is docked at the far end of the harbor, a squat, ugly thing with peeling paint and a single rusted gun mounted on her bow. Her crew consists of 6 men, 2 old-timers with whiskey breath, 3 boys who look like they've never seen the ocean before, and a captain with 1 glass eye and a permanent sneer. He takes your papers without reading them. You'll take the night watch, he says, and keep your mouth shut. You nod. The Reed isn't the Hayes, isn't the Caldwell, but she floats. That's enough. Night falls. The harbor quiets. The Reed rocks gently at her moorings, her deck silent, but for the occasional footstep of the watchman. You take your post at the bow, staring out at the dark water. The Caldwell is gone, vanished into the Atlantic with the rest of the convoy. Red is gone with her. The gulls are silent. You watch the horizon anyway, because that's what you do. That's all there is.